"Do not concede," she wrote. "It takes time for the army who is gathering for his back." Thomas urged Meadows to help the president stand firm. "The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history." The messages don't directly reference Justice Thomas or the Supreme Court, but show how Ginni Thomas sought to guide the president's strategy to overturn the election, urging Meadows to make Trump's controversial attorney, Sidney Powell, the lead and the face. On November 24th, Meadows wrote Thomas, quote, "This is a fight of good versus evil." Thomas replied, "Thank you, needed that. This plus a conversation with my best friend just now." It is unclear who Ginni Thomas was referring to. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas often refers to his wife this way.
"I love being here with my bride, Virginia, who's a gift from God and my totally best friend in the whole world."
So we've known for a long time that Virginia Ginni Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, is an issue, should be an even bigger issue for the Supreme Court Justice. She is a massive power broker on the right, raising money and providing it to different groups, different individuals. And we've all pretended for a long time that that's not supposed to be a conflict of interest. This is a pretty clear conflict of interest though. In the time after the 2020 election, the wife of Clarence Thomas spent those months leading up to the insurrection communicating directly with some of the most powerful people in the Trump administration and trying to assist President Trump, then President Trump, in his bid to effectively end our democracy, to cancel the results of the election and stay in power. And I want to give you a few more specifics about some of the things she was communicating with Mark Meadows specifically with. She sent him a message saying, "Biden crime family and ballot fraud co-conspirators are being arrested and detained for ballot fraud right now and over coming days, and will be living in barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition. House and Senate guys are pathetic too. Only 4 GOP House members seen out in street rallies with grassroots. Where the heck are all those who benefited by president's coattails? Listen to Rush, Mark Steyn, Bongino." No, but like this is the most amazing thing. We know that there are a lot of opportunists on the right. You know, Josh Hawley raising his fist as the insurrection started, and Marjorie Greene in her speeches and all that. Now, she might be a true believer too, but people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, they did what they did, not believing there was anything to it, but because they wanted to be a Republican, and that's kind of what you need to do. Ginni Thomas is a legitimate maniac. She believes that Dan Bongino has the answers. She believed not that Biden and his whole crew should be arrested, but that they were in the process of being arrested, that within days they would be in barges off Gitmo. She was saying this not on Fox News to convince the rubes. She was texting this to Mark Meadows. She believed every word of what she was saying. She talked about having conversations with her best friend, who has to be Clarence Thomas at this point. And there's plenty of evidence that Clarence Thomas was actually listening. And all of this, we're supposed to pretend is not a big issue.
Yeah, well, I'm of 2 minds on this. One might surprise you, one of my points, which is that, look, is Ginni Thomas cray-cray? Of course, she's totally and utterly crazy. No, Biden and his team were not going to be rounded up and put on a barge off of Gitmo. You have to be a literal lunatic to believe that. Is Ginni Thomas a literal lunatic? Yes, but honestly, so are a lot of Republicans. They have mental issues. They are not attached to reality. How do I know? Biden and his team are not on a barge off of Gitmo, nor did they even stand 1% chance of that happening. That's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Now, so that's my opinion on that is not surprising. It's fact-based. If you don't agree with that, you're also detached from reality, okay? They're not off of Gitmo. Nobody got rounded up into FEMA camps. You guys have never been right about a single thing. Trump didn't get reinstated. We can go on and on, right? So, but the part where I diverge from mainstream media and many others is like they're always shocked that Ginni Thomas is crazy. They're like, there's like story after story, like, oh, did you know she thinks this? Yeah, she's a lunatic, so what, right? Like, so why are they shocked? Because they're shocked that it's someone in the elites, someone that they know. They're like, a Supreme Court justice's wife is crazy? Look, newsflash, like 1/4 of the country is crazy. Republicans have lost their minds. Trump lost 60 court cases in a row. Every judge, including every Trump-appointed judge, said there's not a shred of evidence that the election was stolen. Yet, at least 25% of the country believes unquestioningly that it was stolen. They are completely detached from reality, the definition of being crazy. So I'm not at all surprised that Ginni Thomas is crazy. In fact, I'm kind of annoyed that they write 20 different articles about the same thing as if it's like some shocking event, right? Get it through your thick skulls. Republicans have lost touch with reality. So Clarence Thomas, is he crazy? Come on, guys. Of course he is. Oh, but he's a Supreme Court justice. The reason why people in mainstream media are like outraged by it is because they still believe in the mythology of great men. Like, oh, people who are on the Supreme Court and our institutions are great men. No, they're not. He's an idiot. He was put on there by Republicans to be an idiot, okay? And the other day he had the audacity to do a speech about they shouldn't politicize the Supreme Court. Every single one of his decisions has been based on either politics or religion. There is no consistent judicial philosophy other than the right wing is always right, okay? He's a joke. Both him and his wife have IQ near single digits, okay? So none of that is surprising. But here we actually have a story. The story is, wait a minute, Justice Thomas is ruling on January 6 issues and about hiding evidence. He did not want Trump to turn over evidence on January 6. Well, some of that evidence is literally about his wife. No, you gotta recuse yourself. Are there no bounds to your corruption, Clarence Thomas? And the obvious answer is no, there aren't. In a sane world, he would obviously be impeached if he continued to not recuse himself on January 6 cases where his wife is deeply involved in the plot. That's so obvious. There's another really important legal wrinkle to this in a minute, but I want to let Maz jump in.
Well, basically, what we right now, the right wing is come down to you're either a religious nut job or you're an open grifter. So you're either Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, or you're DJT, Donald John Trump, or whatever his middle name is. But this Ginni Thomas falls definitely into, as you guys have been saying, a true believer. And the problem becomes when these people start to believe that there is a religious thing and that Donald Trump is the calling. Like some of the messages that you see between her and Meadows are invoking Jesus, and it's just so crazy. And it reminds me, being someone who was born in Iran, and I saw the cult of personality and how the Ayatollah Khomeini was, for a lot of people, the savior. Donald J. Trump is the Ayatollah Khomeini of Republicans. That's basically what it is. And Ginni Thomas is one of these people who falls into this. I just did a little bit of research about her. She was in a cult. She was in LifeSpring, and she got out of the cult, and then she did work against people, against cults, and now she's found her way back into a cult. So it's crazy, it's nuts. And the irony of this, the craziest part of it is she's not married to a senator who's Republican or a Congress member. She's married to a Supreme Court justice whose number one whole definition is that they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be neutral. We've been seeing these in the hearings this past week when Ketanji Brown Jackson has been saying, I would look at the case and make a decision. This guy's supposed to be neutral, and she's at home running this coup d'etat from the other room. It's at what? There's no point. Like you would think she would have some level of, you know what? I'm not going to talk to you at all. Because we see it like Kellyanne Conway and George Conway, right? We know that family doesn't get along, right? But this is a Supreme Court justice. At what, doesn't he at least have a moment where he goes, listen, woman, keep your thoughts to yourself. You can't go to the rally. The only reason she left the rally is because she said it was cold. She didn't leave the rally because there was a bunch of crazy people that were about to attack she goes, it got cold, I couldn't stand that shows that she's not only crazy, she's weak. She didn't have the courage to storm the Capitol. So if I were one of the stormers, I'd be even more upset. I'd be like, really, Ginny, you left when it got cold?
Yeah.
So she's got problems all over the place, and what's crazy is we're a year and plus past it, and these people are still able to be in positions of power. The fact that, again, looking at Ginni Thomas, she originally supported Ted Cruz. That should tell you a lot. She supported Ted Cruz. Who supports Ted Cruz? You got to be really crazy. Yeah, so it's mind blowing that I still am holding out, but I'm losing hope more and more that the January 6th committee is going to go after some of these people and legally, like you said, either somebody like Thomas should be impeached. He shouldn't be there anymore. Cruz, Hawley, all these people that were involved need to be impeached from their positions, and here we are sitting, listening to every time more evidence comes out. We're just like, of course we knew this.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are the consequences?
Maz, I was very surprised about that thing about the cold. I didn't know that, and it worries me because with the state of climate change, our last defense against insurrections might be evaporating every year. But anyway, I would just go a little bit further. So you had said previously he should be impeached if he doesn't recuse himself. The thing is, like, even if we're forgetting all the other issues with his wife being involved with all the moving of money on the right and everything, he's already had multiple opportunities and he chose not to, as we'll get to. So back in February of last year, when the Supreme Court rejected election challenges filed by Trump and his allies, Thomas wrote in a dissent that it was baffling and inexplicable that the majority had decided against hearing the cases because he believed the Supreme Court should provide states with guidance for future elections. Okay, he's wording that in a way that sounds kind of reasonable, but what he's saying is that they should legitimize these challenges that judges have already dismissed, implying in doing so that those judges made a mistake. They should take it up. And he says that's the reason, but what if his real explanation, real rationale, is that he wants to rule in favor of the Trump administration? What about just earlier, when the court rebuffed Trump's bid to block the release of documents related to January 6th? It was an 8-1 decision. All the other Republicans, 3 justices that were put there by Trump ruled against him. But Clarence Thomas said, no, he shouldn't have to give that information. He's had 2 chances. That's not 3 strikes, but we're not playing sports. This is the Supreme Court. I think that's enough. They're not gonna do anything. They'd never take him out, even though imagine if you found out that if Ketanji Brown Jackson had been sending text messages to the leaders of BLM or something like that, how the right would say, it would be a totally different standard. But this guy has already burned through whatever chances I think it's reasonable for him to have.
Yeah, so of course the problem is there's nothing we could do, right? The Republicans are gonna block all impeachment. There's no way in the world the Republicans would impeach Clarence Thomas. 0 on top of 0%, right? It doesn't matter. He could publicly try to kill a Democrat and they wouldn't impeach him. But look, on January 6th, they literally tried to murder Democrats.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened on January 6th, let alone the Republican vice president, right? And still there's no impeachment, no nothing. And he's like, oh yeah, my wife was part of the plot. I don't care, I'm not guilty. It's absurd, it's beyond absurd. Part of the problem is that we normalize it. It is not normal. She was part of a coup attempt and her husband's on the Supreme Court ruling in her favor. It's insanity. And remember guys, it was 8-1. Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, the Handmaid's Tale lady, they all said, no, you gotta give the evidence over to the House, right? Clarence Thomas was like, no you don't, that evidence is gonna implicate my wife. No, I'm not gonna recuse myself. He has no morals, no principles. It's just gross. And so there's one person on the Supreme Court that is clearly massively corrupt. Ron Wyden, a Democratic senator, is calling for him to resign. He's not gonna resign. Have you ever met a Republican, right? So, I mean, Wyden's not doing the wrong thing by bringing attention to it, but we just know that it's not fixable, unfortunately, in this current state. But I wanted to come back to one other really important point. Ginni Thomas wanted the Democrats to be tried by a military tribunal. That's not just nuts. That is saying, get rid of democracy. Let's go to a dictatorship, a military dictatorship led by our dear leader, Donald Trump. And my husband's on the Supreme Court and he'll sanction it. My best friend. So we have at least one clear fascist on the Supreme Court who says, military tribunals for our political opponents sounds pretty good. She talked to her best friend. So, I mean, we're getting to late stage fascism here. There's more stories about that later in the show. But as serious as that is, it is impossible not to point out how funny Maz's point was. That she's like, this is so important and existential, we're gonna lose the country. Oh, it's a little chilly. I gotta go inside.
She took off. I mean, who would have known that all it would have taken, one more jacket and the coup might have happened. One more layer of clothes. If she had thermals underneath, it might have happened. Could you imagine Ginni Thomas? Like, I got my pets. It's just crazy, man.
Who are the only people?
Way, one thing I will note, going back to this whole thing of like the nut job religious types, the reason obviously they have all of their beliefs, whether it's with abortion or gay marriage or all this other stuff. I think that's why they're so passionate in their support of someone who is clearly such a unmoral human being, Donald Trump. But they feel that for whatever reason, he's their savior. And it does remind me again of these totalitarian states, whether it's Iran or other places that had that cult of personality and said, this guy, I alone can fix it. And so when they go that crazy, you're dealing with crazy. And unfortunately in that household, crazy is living with another crazy. Like she needs her own George Conway to maybe counter her points, but that's not gonna happen.
Instead, we got crazy squared. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.